They made the color for the streamer thingies different on Discord. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
It's a lighter shade of purple now. I should probably put you in the title. Do you want me to plug your Twitch channel?
No, you don't have to.
Alright. Yay. I made notes. Are you proud of me? I hope you're proud. I always make notes, to be fair. You're first. I see. Oh, thank you for the sub. 31
Only
months.
31
Hi.
months.
Yay. Welcome back to the supporters channel, I guess. Actually, do use it.
Definitely in the supporters channel.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's true. Alright. So, we're gonna talk about invasive species today, Passion. Are you
Yay,
excited?
Invasive.
I don't know how much you know about this topic, but hey.
Well, I am an invasive species, so I think that is about all my knowledge.
You think humans are invasive species?
I would say so.
Because that was actually one of the questions. That was your question. Wait, that was your question.
I know it was my question. That's why I brought it up.
I put behind every question who asked me, so that I can keep track. Hello, Nim.
Hello, Nim.
So yeah, I made a couple topics. We have 8 topics to get through.
Oh my god, I will not promise to be there for all 8.
I mean, it will probably take like an hour or two, maybe. Technically, topic 2 and 3 are one topic. I have merged them. They're separate because it's one of the questions. First topic is because we always have to assume that the people that are here are clueless, even though I know they're not. Because this is how you do it, according to, you know, people.
Yeah, I will be the Rob Campus of this thing and just pretend to know nothing and ask you everything.
All of them are on YouTube, Nim. With timestamps and everything. And all the sources in the description. You know, I put work, you know. Jon Snow mode on. No, I don't mean it that way. I just mean that I always explain it just in case someone doesn't understand and is afraid to ask, you know.
Yeah, because everybody knows what Beta-Coccytrium dendrobetides is, you know? Like,
yeah, obviously.
I use that word almost daily.
I can tell. But yeah, so my first topic that I figured we should tackle was what an invasive species is. I know it seems pretty arbitrary, but still.
Yes, define invasive and define species.
I mean, you want to take a guess?
This is like the beginning of any humanities lecture ever. We're going to talk about invasive species, but what does invasive actually mean?
I mean, I looked it up just to be sure, because I have my ideas about it from school, but, you know.
Is there like a set amount it needs to spread, or in a certain time period for it to be counted as invasive?
Well, it turns out it's actually quite a loose term, because one of the questions that we are going to tackle later from Havana is like, are all invasive species bad? And at first I thought yes, because otherwise they wouldn't be invasive, right? But apparently mostly what I found is that it's a species that doesn't originate from the biome that it's in, but has gotten a foothold, is now able to replicate and sustain a population by itself without outside help.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually, that's a lot. That's a lot of animals. So some people also include in the definition that they have to have a negative impact on the environment, but not everybody. So I'm kind of confused. I don't know if the definition changed over time.
But how do you even define without outside help? Like if you eat something or process calories, you could see that as outside help.
I think what they mean is that if you, for example, most invasive species over long distances are brought by humans, right? So that's outside help. But then if they die out, they're not invasive because they can't survive in the new place by themselves. But if they survive as a population without interference from humans, like leaving bait or food or water out, then it's invasive.
Fair enough.
And I found a picture of invasive species. Obviously, we have the vertebrate animals, you know, the animals that have bones. Yeah, but there's also insects and plants, and basically any organism can be invasive. But I mean, today we're just going to talk about animals because that's where my expertise is, not plants. But yeah,
Alright.
plants can also be invasive.
Yes. And asteroids, can they be invasive? Or do they need to be alive to be invasive?
Well, an asteroid can't like uphold a certain population of itself, right? So it has to be an organism. Do pets count as invasive? We're actually going to touch on that topic, but yes, in some ways they do. That topic also is coming. Look, Nim is already going way ahead of us.
Yes, go back in time, Nim.
Okay, but I think that's pretty clear about what invasive people or invasive animals are. I think most people already knew anyway. And then the second thing that I wanted to touch on is, are all invasive species bad? We already talked about that. And I looked this up, and it's actually the research into invasive species mostly exists because invasive species are bad for the environment. So we want to research how to stop invasive species from happening, and we want to research how to like reset the biomes that are affected, right? So it was actually really hard to find anything positive, but apparently some plants can actually be invasive and have a positive impact on their environment. But I don't really understand plants, so that's all I found out. From animals itself, I have not found a single animal that has been scientifically proven to be a beneficial to their environment while being invasive. But if you find one, let me know.
Maybe the little fish that clamp onto sharks, like a symbiotic relationship.
Are those invasive?
I'm not sure, but if you say it, let me know. I'm just brainstorming.
Yeah. I mean, something like that, right? Or maybe an insect that is not competing for resources, but it then becomes a food source for other animals nearby. Something like that. But I couldn't find any scientific proof, at least.
Aha. I have googled it, and it seems they are not invasive.
Oh, the little fishies.
The little fishies, the suckerfish. But if they are introduced unnaturally into a non-native ecosystem, they could become invasive.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. So don't worry, like, that basically covers the basics of invasive species, I think. I mean, if Nim has questions, obviously he's free to ask. Um, but yeah, I was gonna leave it at that and then just hop into the questions from the Discord because we got quite a few this time. Like last time I had only one and now I have 6 questions.
That is too many questions.
No, it's fine. It's fun. This is fun.
Yes.
I mean, I always take all the questions and then I order them in a way that makes sense to me in like the flow of the whole talk. So, I'm going to dismiss this ad. Go away. Okay. And the first person that we're going to do is Havana, and he asked what are the dangers or consequences of invasive species, and I feel like that's more basic information, so I put it first. The images, I just find them. You can see the source of the image. It's IPBES for global assessment.
Mm.
But yeah, he asked what are the danger or consequences of invasive species. So obviously there are some that seem pretty obvious, right? So when an invasive species gains a foothold in a certain food web, right, then they start competing for resources most of the time. And that can, if they are very good at this, and they might not have natural predators because they don't belong there, basically, they might start outcompeting native species, which leads to native species starting to struggle and sometimes even going extinct. If the invasive species themselves is the predator, the same thing happens, but more directly, right? And then there's also indirect effects. So there is, for example, a possibility that an invasive species might carry a disease that the other animals are susceptible to, but hasn't been introduced in their environment before, and then you can have mass die-offs. They can also sometimes change the whole texture of the land if they build dams or destroy certain plants that are needed to keep water in the ground, stuff like that. And I found one more very interesting effect where sometimes if the animal is a predator, the native species can also be driven out of their native habitat by just fear and adapting to the fact that there's now a predator there. Which is cool. Hello, Havana. I am doing your
Hi.
question.
I am trying to follow the question and at the same time be wary for when the doorbell rings.
You'll be fine.
I got a message they are here in 2 minutes, so.
Yay, food.
Food. Can we eat invasive species?
Yes, actually, some of them we can. And we actually will touch on this when we get to the lionfish, but it's actually one of the most sustainable ways to get rid of them if they're edible. So both for animals and plants.
Do they taste good?
Apparently, I've never tried. But basically, the long-term consequence of invasive species, speaking in a broad sense, is that it has a negative impact on the biodiversity of the food web that it like enters, right? And a negative effect on biodiversity has long-term consequences for any animal and plant within that biome that might, touch on that food chain. Which is a lot, because believe it or not, the whole world is basically connected in that way. It reminds me of when they lost the wolves in, I think, Yellowstone, and the whole landscape began to change. Like rivers began to change where they were, just because there was no predation, so a higher level of prey animals, which then ate more plants, and then they were outcompeted by other plants. Like, it's all connected. So introducing another animal into that equation can have long-term consequences. It's your question, don't worry about it. Does that answer your question, Havana? Or is there anything else that you still wanted to talk about? Good. I actually looked up some statistics for you as well. in case you were interested. And scientists currently approximate that 42% of the endangered species on the planet are at risk because of an invasive species. So that's almost half. That was actually really high. And then there's one more risk that I didn't really talk about, but it's an economical risk, a financial risk for human populations. But yeah, that wasn't really like the main focus of my stream, so I don't want to dive into that too deep. Alright, so if we then answered your question, we can move on to Passion's question, which is sort of ironic that he's not here right now. He asked if humans are invasive, and I actually thought it was really interesting, so I went on a look, you know. And I found a surprising few amount of papers mentioning this in general, whether it was like affirmative or not. But I did find one. Again, all my sources will be available. And in that specific paper, they argue that humans are invasive in most of the world because the development of our society has impacted the species that existed there before we did in a negative way. I suppose it would be the regions we naturally occur, but at this point we're so far away from nature as a species that even in the area where we would naturally occur, which I think is commonly accepted as to being Africa, right? We would outcompete the native species there. And some scientists do say that a native species can become invasive if it's spreading rapidly into a previous unoccupied habitat in the same space. So in that regard, we could also be invasive where we're from. But it's a difficult question, and I'm assuming there's a lot of room for nuance. But yeah, obviously we work the land, right? We change it beyond recognition sometimes through like building cities, farms, stuff like that. And in doing so, we do affect the not just the biome, but the food webs and all the animals and plants that live near where we settle. Some animals might benefit from it. Some animals might have negative effects. Well, most animals will probably have negative effects from having a city built on their land. But yeah. And the fact that we are now also on the ocean, right, also has led to negative and deadly consequences for many marine species. So you could argue that we're even invasive in the ocean, though we don't technically live there. And the article that I found also argues that wildlife tourism, like safaris and stuff like that, is also a form of being invasive. Though I personally believe that is a stretch, they do like argue for that in this article. A symbiosis. Symbiosis is mutually beneficial, and since we don't technically have any benefit from the animals that we're helping, like for example rats, right, explode in population sometimes when a city is built, but we don't have an actual benefit from that, so I wouldn't call it symbiosis. Let me just use this furry animal videos are a benefit. I mean, yeah, but I don't think many people are gonna want to pet rats. And if you're talking about pets, then they're invasive, but not to us, right? I mean, invasive in a way. um. Actually forgot to change the board, but I can still do that. Yeah. Oh, it's small. Why is it small? So this is basically what I mean, right? This is a problem for most animals if this happens on where they live. So yeah, I think there's no complete scientific consensus on it yet, but from the information that I do have, it does consider humans to be quite invasive, but it's hard to sort of quantify our impact because we're so far removed from nature at this point. Yeah, a herd of people. But we know that some animals do benefit from our presence, but most wild animals don't. The biomass of wild animals is like 3% now, I think, from the biomass of all animals on Earth. Something like that. So yeah, I hope that answers Passion's question. He's not here, so I can't ask him. So short answer, yes, basically. Do you guys have any more questions in chat, or should we move on? Yeah, let's then move on. Sure, we can do that. Let me change the picture, and then you instantly will know what we'll talk about probably. This guy! He's beautiful, isn't he? So this is Sky's question, and it wasn't a question as much as I want to talk about this, so... See, that's hard to quantify them. For example, if we take this, right? This is a lionfish. And these fish, if you talk to any biologist or conservationalist, uh, they'll probably get really angry when seeing this picture. Lionfish is one of the most well-known invasive species, especially in America, that is destroying marine life, right? And the first mentions of the fact that the lionfish was seen was already before 2000, but it really started exploding in population in the early 2000s. So technically, when the fish was seen, right, it wasn't supposed to be there, so it was already invasive, right? But they didn't observe any actual effects yet. Whereas now, there's definitely effects. It's really bad. And I'm gonna talk about it with you guys.
And with me.
And with you, yes. So this is a lionfish passion. Look at the pretty.
I've seen this before.
Yeah, I know, right? They're pretty. But they're also one of the most invasive species in the world. There, you can actually find channels on YouTube just dedicated to eradicating lionfish. Because it's that big of a deal. And this is actually one of the animals that can be eaten. Though it has to be prepared professionally most of the time. Because of the spines, right? You don't want to step on them because toxic and stuff. And once you watch these videos, you'll also get sort of a grasp on how bad it is, because these lionfish aren't even afraid of humans, because they've just never learned to fear anything, because this is an example of an animal that's introduced into an environment where it does not have a natural predator for itself. And this fish is actually predatory, so it will eat basically anything that fits into its mouth.
Including humans?
They don't fit in the mouth. They're not that big.
Fingers?
Yes, probably. But these lionfish in America, they're not afraid of anything. They'll just hover there and think that their spines are enough to protect them, because usually they are. I'm actually not sure, Nim. That's a really good question. Like, you mean in their native habitat, right? I think it's probably eels, but I'd have to look it up.
That's just my job today, looking up everything.
I'm looking too. Yeah, eels. And some sharks.
Maybe like groupers or something, or snappers.
Yeah. And in the area where it is now, obviously it doesn't have any natural predators, but some animals have adapted to eating lionfish that are either dead or offered to them by divers. Like, the other species, the native species, are learning, but it's not enough. And the population of lionfish has exploded, like, genuinely, over the first years of the 2000s, right? 2004 to 2008. It was kind of insane. And they're doing a lot of research on this. You can actually find a lot of research on lionfish because it's such a major problem. By 2010, 40% of all the predators' biomass, so not all predators, but the biomass, the weight, was lionfish in that ecosystem. And keep in mind, that might not seem like that much. 40% is not even half, but this animal is not supposed to be there. So that's massive. Compared to all the other predators, 40% is lionfish, right?
And what are the other predators?
Sharks and barracuda eels. So it's
Yeah.
basically just the predators in the system that are like using the same prey fish as food, right? And lionfish eat a lot. And it actually, in 2010, they also found that the decline in biomass, right, of the fish that the lionfish eats, so their prey, was 65%. So if you had 100 fish there in 2004, then by 2010 there were only 35 left. That is massive too. That is a huge blow to an ecosystem. So divers have taken it upon themselves to protect the water and the corals, because the corals, they depend in turn on those prey fish. So they're now also starting to die. But the lionfish is really hard to hunt because it's really annoying to fish with nets, because they can get stuck, and obviously you don't want to touch the spines because, yeah, they're toxic to humans as well. So one of the best ways to do it is spearfishing, but then we can only remove them one by one, and there's, yeah, you can tell 40% of the biomass for the predators is lionfish. So there's hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands lionfish out there. Right? And I actually found a really interesting graph that I wanted to show you guys.
Mm-hmm.
This one, which is the population is a logarithmic scale, but you can see in the recent years the population has started to decline. And of course that might be because we're more aware and we're hunting them, but it also might be a sign of something far worse, which means that there's no longer enough prey fish to sustain the population, which means the ecosystem would be collapsing. Which is
And
bad
what do you think?
because, it's the whole coast of America. I think it's probably a mix of the two, but I think it's a very worrying sign. So first, when people see this graph, they're probably like, "Oh, that's great, right? The population is going down," but it might actually not be so great because it might be a symbol of something bad. Yes, they are tasty and humans eat them, but like I said, they're kind of hard to prepare.
And toxic.
Mm. Well, just the spines. If the meat is not.
I see, but what guarantees do you have that?
I am not a chef, so you'd have to ask a chef. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it is they're trying to resupply the reefs with fish, the prey fish. But it's currently uncertain if it's going to work. They don't even know if they can save the reefs. They're that far gone.
But what is even the position of humans in trying to move the ecosystem back? Because that is also invasive behavior.
Yes, true. But the fact is that most of invasive species are invasive because of humans. And it's very probable that the lionfish is one of those examples. That we accidentally or deliberately introduce them into the ecosystem. And like in modern times, of course, now we have all the regulations at the border. You're not allowed to bring in food because there might be eggs in it, stuff like that, to help combat invasive species. But in the early 1900s, that was just not a thing. We didn't really know. So if you didn't want your snake anymore, you just let it go. Which I don't know if you guys know this, but in the Everglades in Florida, there is a huge problem with certain types of snakes that are destroying the native wildlife, which are invasive, and they're actually former pets that were released and then started to just form their own population, and now there's so many that it's a pain. This has happened to
Mm-hmm.
goldfish as well, where people let goldfish go into the rivers. They adapted, became black, and are now destroying the ecosystem. And they're really hard to find because obviously they're black now. Nim's point is also really good, right? Does the habitat get used to it? Sometimes. Like I said, some animals are now starting to learn how to eat at least the dead lionfish. So nature is extremely resilient and extremely flexible, and it will always try to find a balance, right? But it takes a long time. And that is mostly the problem because these invasive species, once they find a foothold and they find a niche where they can grow, they just explode in population. And that's the problem. If they were to just grow slowly, then they might even become a part of the ecosystem naturally, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the major explosion is a problem. And if the food web collapses, then you get a dead zone. And only a couple of species will survive. And since the lionfish, in our example here, is a predator, if the food web of the prey species collapses, their population will also collapse. But then we're too late.
Mm-hmm.
So the question of should we interfere? It's a hard one.
Well, let me be advocate of the devil.
Hmm.
Do we even need the working ecosystems?
Yes. Short answer yes, because all ecosystems on Earth are connected. And if one of them collapses, maybe nature is versatile enough that it will bounce back. But if several ecosystems are collapsing, then eventually that will lead to negative effects all over the planet. and that includes us as a species. Like, even if we were to be extremely selfish and be like, oh, we don't need all of those animals, we don't eat them, they're not useful to the human race, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even then, it's a problem because those species also affect species that are imperative to human survival, like pollinators, for example, or algae in the ocean that keep the ocean healthy and also create oxygen, stuff like that. So we should care, for sure. The question is how much and what can we do and when is it a problem? Like for the lionfish, obviously we know it's a major issue at this point. We have the data, we can confidently
Mm-hmm.
say this is a problem, we need to do something about it. But certain other
There,
animals,
there also houses some sort of superiority complex in that, though. Like the idea that everything is makeable, and
mhm,
especially with invasive species, it turns out it's not.
yeah. Enjoy your food, Havana.
Have
Yeah, of
fun.
course, humans do tend to try and control nature and think we can control nature, and most of the time we can't. But we're very good at bringing it out of balance. And the planet, like, let's be real here, the planet does not care. If humans die out, or if most animals die out, the planet will keep spinning and will keep rotating, evolution will continue, and eventually there will be other animals. Like, it doesn't care. So, the problem that we created is mostly a problem for ourselves, and obviously all the species that are caught in the web.
Fair enough.
But yeah, the problem with the lionfish is that we don't have a good way currently to combat them, and they keep spreading as well. So every consecutive year, they have continued to spread all over the ocean. As long as the water is warm enough and there's enough food, they will spread. It's a
So
problem.
you would say it's also tied in with global warming?
Possibly.
Question mark.
Very possibly. And they're also really bad for corals. And corals are already suffering, right? You have the ocean acidification, you have climate change, overfishing as well. So now they also have to face another crisis, basically. And most of the corals just don't have that resilience right now to bounce back from that. No, humans hunt them now as main targets. Like I said, there's channels on YouTube that you just yet. They go out and spearfish for lionfish. Some people even have made this a tourist attraction. They're making good money. But yeah, we're hunting them exclusively now. Because it's basically the only way to get rid of them or at least control the population. Like, this is a problem. We're in trouble.
Hmm.
And this is also why Sky was so passionate about the lionfish. Because, yeah, it's been in the news a lot. You know, it's one of the most famous invasive species and one of the most destructive ones that are currently on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know where it's gonna go with the lionfish. I'm gonna be honest.
Maybe we can set out an even more invasive species to kill this invasive species, and then we end up in this infinite loop of invasiveness.
I mean, it doesn't have to happen. I think. Ooh, don't quote me on this, but I think it was in Japan where they had an invasive species and this was an insect, and they actually set out a predator that only survived on that specific invasive species. So they decimated the population of in the invasive species and then all died because they didn't have any more food, and then the problem was solved. I thought it was brilliant. But that's of course very situational. And yeah, for lionfish we don't really have that option. If we could like bioengineer a disease that only affects lionfish and not anything else, but then you're also
My mind
playing God.
instantly went to radiation.
Yeah, but you don't want to affect the rest of the environment that they're in, right? And with diseases, the
Nanotechnology.
problem is that diseases might mutate and then might affect native species as well.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we need like underwater drones that seek out and spear them.
Yeah, weren't there like these delivery trucks of medicine on micro scale for cancer treatment? Maybe we can use that to deliver poison to these creatures.
Oh, you mean like nanobots?
Yes. The little cars.
Maybe. I don't know that much. Is it plausible to play a fish in D&D and have someone carry it with water when you swim inside? Depends on your DM. It's not really on topic, but yeah, it depends on your DM.
Then the human, or at least the character you play in D&D, becomes an invasive species because they capture all the fish. So, no, because it's ethically, morally wrong.
I mean, we know humans mostly are to blame for invasive species, but not all the time, right?
But in this theoretical scenario, 100%. Oh. If you are the fish and you let yourself be carried by another character, then I don't think ethics has a very solid point on this specific matter.
Well, you would be invasive if we let you go, I guess.
If it's symbiotic, I think you can get away with it.
Anyway.
Anyways, back to the fish. the lionfish.
Do you have any more questions on lionfish?
Not specifically lionfish. There's plenty of more topics to get to.
I mean, this was the fifth topic, so we're over halfway through.
Really? You went through 4 topics without me?
No, not 4.
3.
We went over your question and you weren't here. I was so sad.
What?
I know.
Let's get back to that question. I have plenty to ask about that.
You mean if humans are invasive?
Of course.
I'm very sure.
We can do that after, if there's still time.
Yeah, sure. I'll just name it Are Humans Invasive Part 2 in the video.
The sequel. Which is quite fitting to the human invasiveness problem to begin with.
Fair enough. Nim doesn't have any questions about lionfish, should I?
But I do think they're cute. They're cute horrors.
They are beautiful, for sure.
I've definitely seen one in Amersfoort, right?
Hmm?
I think they had one.
Mm-hmm. Like in the zoo, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, better hope they don't escape, I guess.
Are they that lethal?
Well, we don't want them to be invasive in our waters. Though, to be fair, it's probably too cold in this ocean.
They look like old humans. Yeah, I can see. Or
Okay.
like an iguana.
Next topic. Oop.
It's a rat.
Yes. Stendolf had a question about rats. He's asking, are rats considered an invasive species anywhere? And this is actually a really interesting question. Do you know why, Passion?
No.
Because rats are one of the only species that are native to almost every place on the planet.
Ooh. Are there more like... Because I know there are insects that are basically native globally.
Hmm.
Are there more species like rats that are native to any part? Like mammals or...
Not that ones that come to mind instantly. I mean, there obviously is several different species of rats, right? But some type of rat is native to almost the whole planet. So I went looking, of course, are rats invasive somewhere? And they are. They're mostly invasive to islands. And they got to those islands, surprise, surprise, by humans on boats.
Of course.
And these rats are actually major problems to these islands because these islands are usually pretty far from the coast and they have a really fragile but very specific biodiversity, right? We're talking about islands like Madagascar or smaller islands like that. And the rats over there, like rats are predators, but they can also eat plants, right? They're omnivores. And they're really good at what they do. And they're really good at reproducing. So they tend to be a menace to the biodiversity on these islands. Especially birds. But all other small animals, and in turn, everything that eats those small animals is then also affected, right?
And to answer the question in the chat, as far as I can tell, rats are not at all present in Antarctica and not native in Greenland. Oh, and Iceland. Let me follow up on that.
Yeah. fashion follows up for me.
They are present, but not native in Iceland either.
Okay, so they're probably invasive there then.
Yes.
Actually, I've seen a documentary about this.
But to be honest, I've seen plenty of advertisements, especially in some bigger cities and metropoles, calling rats invasive species. But I think according to the definition we set
They're
in the
not,
beginning,
no.
they would not be. Yeah.
I mean, unless you want to argue that a city is a created environment where the rats are not native. But
Well,
only humans are.
I think you could argue that to some degree.
Because if you make that argument, like, then yes, rats in cities would be invasive because we created an environment where they're not native. But then again, we built the city in an environment where they're native. So will
To
it
be
hold
honest,
up?
then anything above like minus 10 meters sea level would be a space constructed by humans in some way, and then nothing would be native except humans.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we're
So
quickly heading in that way. Like I said, the biomass of the wild animals is surprisingly low.
Yeah, but defining invasiveness like that would be too far for me at this moment.
Fair. I mean, for the rats specifically, we know for a fact that they have probably caused extinctions of native species on tropical islands, but because we don't know that the rats were there, or maybe we hadn't even discovered these species yet, it mostly goes unnoticed. So right now we don't really know the extent of the effects of the rats that are invasive. We just know it's big, it's massive. But once rats are in an environment, it's really hard to get rid of them. You can do it on some islands, because if you eradicate the whole population on the island and then make sure no more rats come, right? You can do it. But the bigger the island, the harder it is, because they breed quite quickly. They can hide underground, and if you miss like two, then you know.
But I would think rats are more easily exterminated than fish.
I mean, it depends. How would you deal with it?
I would lure them with peanut butter.
What if you accidentally also lure native species?
Collateral damage.
See, I guess that's where the conservationists are, like, disagree with you.
I also like peanut butter, so I can see how this would go. How this would backfire.
Yeah. I mean, I found one really interesting article, whereas, so let me set the scene, right? There is two different types of rats in this article, the Norway rat and the ship rat, which I want to mention, the Latin name of the ship rat or the normal rat is Rattus rattus. I think that is so funny. I don't know, just me? Okay.
I see what they did there.
And they are invasive to each other, which is so hilarious to me. So a quote specifically from this article, word for word, is ship rats, or the common rats, were common commensals in Britain until replaced by the Norway rats, and the Norway rats were hugely abundant in the native forest throughout New Zealand until widely replaced by ship rats. So they invaded each other's area and are now invasive species, and the other rat species native area. And are outcompeting each other. I thought that was so funny. I mean, obviously it's a big issue. But, like... I mean, what are the chances?
I was thinking, where does the name shipwreck come from? Is that from like the colonial age?
Probably.
But the rats have invested everywhere from like the 15th, 16th century.
Hey, Amber. Oh.
Hello, Ember.
I'll treat them after the stream, alright? I promise. I can send you a picture.
Let me actually
Hmm?
look that up.
You're gonna find out why they're called shipwrecks?
That's my job. I just look things up while you monologue into space.
Okay. Fair enough.
I was right. It is the historical context.
Nice. Can you also find a world map of rats? Let me see. I tried to look it up, I couldn't find one. Oh, I found one. Okay. I can find one on my phone apparently, but not on my computer. Yeah, according to this, they're not in Iceland. You're right, and the top of Russia, and then Antarctica, and everything else, except for one state in America has rats. Why does one state in America does not have rats?
Which state?
Not sure. It's like in the middle.
Like Nevada? Maybe like a desert rat. Does that count?
I mean, apparently they inhabit the whole of Africa, so yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. Maybe you can find out why a part in the middle of the USA does not have rats.
Does not have rats.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
so the whole USA has, except for the top of Alaska, doesn't have rats. Apart from one part in the middle that seems to be free. That's strange. Oh,
They
you did?
say it is mostly because of the extremely cold climate,
Yeah, but
especially in the top of Alaska.
yeah, at the top of Alaska, it's the cold. I can understand that, but the middle of the continental USA, like
Might it be
why?
Alberta in Canada?
Maybe. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's not. Wait, can I just send you the
They say
picture?
Alberta has started a rat control program in the 1950s. It's one of the only places in the world with an official rat-free status for decades.
I'm not good at geography, but I can send you the picture of the map.
Yes, please. Well, Alberta is
I think
just
it's too far to
center
the
Canada.
south. Yeah, I think it's too far to the south for that. Maybe the map is just wrong.
Oh no, that is Canada.
You think so?
Yeah.
Don't think it's a little bit too far south?
I don't.
Yeah. I mean, it's on
This
the
map
border, I
is-
guess.
I'm also not the best at geography, but
Yeah, that's interesting. So because they are just constantly hunting them down, they're free.
yeah, it is definitely Alberta.
Nice.
So there is, in fact, a very effective rat-free rat control program.
It just took them a long time.
Yeah, just 70 years, but they have held the status for decades.
Good for them, I guess.
Funny, they call it the deliberate human success story in keeping rats out. I do like that phrasing a lot for very problematic ethical reasons.
Like why?
Deliberate human success story. This literally posits humans as superior to the rats in every way. They also call it a success, killing animals.
Yeah, okay. I see.
There are multiple ways to interpret it, and all of it is coming from a superiority or savior complex.
The Norway rat is unique because it must live with humans or in the structures, cannot survive in natural areas anymore, and cannot overwinter in cultivated fields in Canada. Yes, so rats are one of those animals that really benefit from human presence and have adapted over time to living with us. To the point where this particular species cannot survive without us.
That's not good. So basically, we are the zoo and the rats are just visiting us.
We're more than a zoo to them, I think. We're also a food source and a shelter.
Well, fair enough.
Who knows, maybe the rats are actually thinking of us as their gods.
I think so. Rats are pretty smart.
They are, yeah. They are extremely clever, which is also one of the reasons it's so hard to eradicate them. They're trying in New Zealand to like get rid of the rats, but they keep learning which traps are dangerous, and then they have to figure out a new way to get rid of them. Because rats are also social creatures, and they like, well, teach each other what they know. So I hope that's enough answers for Sandolph. I don't think he is in chat right now. So I'm just gonna have to assume. Does anybody else have more questions about the rat creature?
Are they tasty? That is a question Sandalf would ask, so I'll just ask it in his place.
I'm not sure. I've never eaten one before. You can probably find it online because there are people who do eat them.
Or like roadkill or something. Rats tasty? Question mark. Oh, they are actually eaten in many parts of the world and considered quite tasty.
Yeah, I mean,
the taste profile is mild, sometimes described as lean pork.
Oh, interesting. So you're
Do not eat your rats.
are you? Yeah, obviously PSA don't go out catching wild rats and eat them. They can carry diseases. But are you like suggesting we should just do the same as we do with lionfish?
Yeah, eat the problem away. Get obesity in the process, so we can get another problem.
Are mice the same in this regard? They're not as successful as invasive species. They have way more natural predators as well. So, yeah, mice aren't as successful as rats. What's the difference between a rat and a mouse? They're completely different species. So rats might look like big mice, but they're really not. Just like donkeys aren't horses, and horses aren't donkeys, even though they look similar. Welcome back, Kavana. Sorry. I hope your food was good.
To answer Nim's question, I cannot really find any animal that has been definitively destroyed by rats, but there are accounts of animals having been decimated by invasive rats, like the kiwi.
On islands, we know almost with certainty that rats have contributed to the extinction of species. I found detailed accounts of it, but we can't prove it. That's the problem mostly.
They say at least some birds and probably many island reptiles.
Yeah, most likely. And even small mammals, maybe. Carrot soup and you don't like carrots. Oh, no. Pain.
According to the IUCN study, at least 75 species have died out due to rats. They just don't know which ones.
Okay.
Great research. Everybody died. We just don't know who.
I mean, once you start actually doing research and diving into scientific research, only then you find out how little we actually know about most topics. But yeah. Any other questions, Nim? Nope. Alright. Then we go to the next topic. And Passion, you're gonna love this because this one also includes some ethics.
Yay.
Boop. Oh, it's big. Okay, hang on. Let me actually. Why is it so big? Okay. I'll get there. I promise. Here we go. We're gonna talk about this.
It's a cat.
Yes.
Which is a pet? Which is the question that Nim asked at the start.
So, Glavo asked, are cats that go outside considered invasive species?
Well, according to the definition that we posited at the start, I would say no.
Why?
Because the cats, contrary to dogs, are native to the environments they are in.
You're wrong.
In most of it.
Where do you think the house cat comes from?
Egypt, maybe? I have no idea.
So do you think they're native in Europe? Or America?
I would think that felines have roamed most parts of the earth before humans went global. Maybe I'm
Yes,
completely wrong, I'm just guessing here.
Specifically, the domestic cat is in fact invasive in most countries. They don't live here in nature. And they're actually one of the most destructive invasive species on the planet. And the reason this is such a touchy topic is because if you ask most scientists, biologists, researchers, they'll tell you that cats should be confined to either the inside of the house or the inside of the house and the backyard and not be let free to roam the streets because of the just immense negative impact they have on nature and all animals, plants that live there. This is a touchy topic because most pet owners that do let their cats roam free, right? Free roaming cats, think it's the cat's right to roam outside.
This is a really interesting ethics question.
Yes, it is.
Because to give someone a right and also apply it, you would need to be able to understand the ethical consequences of your own actions. And I think it's completely falsifiable to see if a cat can understand the ethical implication of going outside.
Yeah, plus the cat obviously didn't decide to be here, but we have a responsibility as the owner, right, towards the cat and everything that the cat does, in a way. So
according to law, it would be your extended risk.
Yes.
Like a child.
So a cat actually killing native species could be considered poaching in some ways. As a veterinarian, I know that cats that are kept on the premises, so either fully indoors or indoors plus catio or plus confined backyard, live considerably longer than cats that are free roaming. So from a just purely life expectancy point of view, keeping your cat confined is better. But then when you talk about animal welfare, right, then it becomes really hard to actually figure out, because hunting for the cat is a natural behavior, and the consensus is the more natural behavior, the better it is, right? But in this case, the animals it's hunting are not its natural prey.
No, they are not.
And cats have been known to decimate bird populations by 80% in just a couple weeks. Especially in the season where there's young birds, right, that can't fly yet in nests. The massacre is immense. You know, if you are in a neighborhood where there is cats or where there aren't cats, if you pay attention to the birds.
I think in a country like the Netherlands, basically any densely populated area has free roaming cats at this point.
Yes. But
So
do we
cats are also
like
used. Oh, sorry.
I mean from a purely scientific point of view, right? Purely objective. No emotional anything. It's a bad idea. And it's not just a bad idea, it's unjustifiable. The fact how we are introducing these animals into an environment that is not their own and then letting them destroy it is unjustifiable objectively. But then we get the emotional part of it, which is why it's an ethics question, right?
And this is the same exact question again with the superiority of humans, or at least the self-believed superiority of humans.
Yeah.
And in this case, also the humanification of the cat's emotions.
Yeah.
So I would say getting legislation or something to keep these cats indoors or confined is basically near to impossible with the
Exactly.
current state of ethical affairs.
And that makes it so difficult because I actually looked up the amount of animals that cats kill and I found data for Australia in 2018, 2020, and 2020, yeah. And for China plus the US, I couldn't, like this article just lumped them together. So for Australia, it's hundreds of millions a year.
Mm-hmm.
And for China and the US, it's in the billions amount of prey that's killed by cats a year. Let that number sink in. A couple billion a year.
In Australia?
No, it's China plus the US.
China. Oh, okay. Yes, that is. So then a conservative estimate would be that globally it would be in the tens of billions.
Yes, probably. And that's on a yearly basis, so that's each year.
Though in another respect, you can also use cats to hunt other invasive species, like they do in farms.
Yes, in a way, but the problem is you can't teach a cat that it can kill the one small creature and not the other small creature. It's not the cat's responsibility.
It is not. I'm actually curious. Can you not teach a cat that? Have they tried? No. I'm kind of curious now.
I don't know 100% that they have tried, but from my experience that I know about behavior in animals, once you activate the cat's prey drive, it's not going to make a difference between a rat or a bird, right? Maybe you could train them if you took a lot of time and a lot of effort, but you also wouldn't be there to supervise them, right? So I don't know. I don't think people are going to want to spend millions on a training program for cats to just eat the invasive rat and not the native rat.
I can see technology being able to help in this, though.
I mean, the method of old, what we used to do is have cats and then put a little bell on their collar. This is the reason the bell is on the collar. Not because it's cute, because it alerts the birds that a cat is coming. Problem is, it doesn't always cute. Work. I mean, yeah, it's also cute, but it doesn't always work. It's a very rudimentary solution.
Maybe they can make like a beep only audible to birds and very clear.
Yeah, but then you still have the small amphibians, reptiles, and mammals that the cat hunts. And we have observed that house cats, so the domesticated cat, usually hunt and then don't eat the prey because obviously they're fed by their owners, right? So some house cats will hunt dozens of birds each night they go out and then just leave them there, like the dead ones. This is also a massive problem because that means that they're killing way more than they would if they were actually hunting for food.
So what would a possible solution be then?
The only
apart from
viable possible solution if people want to continue to own cats, which they do, is to make cats confined to the owner's property. So indoor, outdoor, as long as it's on the owner's property. But right
yeah, but
now, that's not an option.
I mean, it's really difficult to theorize about that to begin with. Like, what small thing can we do to build up to the process of making cats solely indoor creatures?
I mean, one of the things that are already happening in the veterinarian field, which I'm seeing, right, is really nice. It's that catios are becoming way more popular, and this is also due to social media and popularizing the idea. But just having a cat that has like unlimited access to the outdoors, but in a confined space, benefits everybody. Because, like I said, the cats that are living that way, we don't see negative health effects, and we do see positive health effects and a longer lifespan, right? Another thing you could do is hold owners accountable. So first of all, you would need legislation that chipping your cats is mandatory, which, to be fair, in the Netherlands, I think they're working on it.
It is, right?
No, for no, you don't have to chip your cats. Most people do, but it's not technically mandatory.
I see.
But then if you chip them, and then if you find a cat with a dead animal, then you read out the chip and you find the owner. Problem is, we're not gonna find most of the kills, right? In fact, we're probably gonna find like less than 1%. So in the long run, that's just not viable.
I think it's not that difficult to create some kind of technology, like wearable technology for the cat that can detect when the cat is hunting a prey and send a GPS location.
Maybe that, but it would maybe even be even better to scare the prey away. Though they tend to, like I said, they tend to hunt baby animals that can't really escape. But their hunting is only one part of the problem, Passion. Do you want to guess what the other part is?
Do I want to guess what the other part is in relation to cat problems? How about stray cats?
Yeah, obviously that they cause the same problems as domestic cats, but they're also hunting for food most of the time. But
you cannot control anything related to their.
I mean, we have catch, neuter, release programs where we catch the feral cats, neuter them, and release them in hopes of like killing the population eventually by natural causes.
Fair enough.
But the problem that I was referring to is that cats can carry and transmit certain diseases to wildlife and have done so in the past. That might not make the cats very sick, but will kill the native animals. And a problem that they are facing in some countries, not in the Netherlands currently, is that some domestic cats have started crossbreeding with native other feline species. And in that way, indirectly lowering the population of these native felines.
Don't most cats in the Netherlands get vaccines for many diseases?
Yes, but again, that's not mandatory.
Like Niesiekte and stuff like that.
Yes. Our cats mostly get vaccinated. It's not mandatory, unfortunately, and just as we see a decline in vaccination in children, we also see a huge decline in vaccinations for pets.
But can't, like, I can see from an ethical standpoint why we cannot mandate it for humans, but I see no objection why we cannot just make it mandatory for any animal that is being kept as a pet.
I mean, if you want to put your dog in a shelter, for example, if you go on a holiday, right, and you put your dog in like a holiday shelter, most shelters will mandate that you have your vaccines in order.
Yes.
And that's legal, but currently it's not illegal. for owners to not vaccinate.
Well, to be honest, if they would only stay indoors, it wouldn't be that big of a deal.
Yeah. And I think for dogs, some vaccinations are mandatory.
I think dogs overall are way more regulated than cats, aren't they?
Yes.
So basically, then the only solution would be legislation.
Yes.
Completely rethinking the ethical framework of how we keep and treat pets and the rights we gain and the things we need to do to take care of the animal well and also the environment.
Yeah, because we decided to bring the cats here, right? So does that make us responsible for their destruction?
Well, this is also a very interesting case of the implicated subject.
Mm.
Does something that our ancestors of generations past have done still implicate us to be responsible for the results of those actions? There's also a very big debate in tourism, which is kind of like this, but just with humans and completely legal.
Yeah. Well, does that make local species more adaptable with a higher gene pool? No, because they're crossbreeding species. So the offspring, if there is any offspring, it is most likely to die. And if it does survive, then it's most likely to be infertile. So basically, if cats are breeding with native felines, and there's way more domestic cats than there is native felines in an environment, they are competing with the native felines for mates, meaning that there is less normal native felines being born each year, meaning a decline in population. Does that make sense? I'm not sure. I don't really do humans.
According to the very accurate historical movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, they died out because humans slapped them with hot dog fingers.
So okay.
Maybe that answers your question.
For cats and the statistics on their destruction, like I already said, it's for the birds it's massive. It's up to 80%, and we already know that up to 2016, these numbers are from 2016, cats have exterminated at least 63 species of native wildlife just by hunting. Yes. But it's most likely higher, because these are just the ones that we could document.
Yeah. And cats are active when humans are not, so
Yeah.
Especially historical data will probably not be there at all.
No, most likely. So it's at least 63, but if you were to ask my personal opinion, and I had to guess, I would say it's at least 4 times higher, maybe even more.
And that's like in our lifetime, or in
that's up to 2016. But like I said, that's only the cases where it's documented.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, your estimate, would that be like, what time period would that be?
Ooh. Last 200 years, let's say. And I think it might actually even be higher than 4 times. I don't know. I think we're massively underestimating the impacts in the numbers, because we just don't have the data to actually make the good conclusions, right?
Well, with these things, the problems are too big to measure them with purely empirical data to begin with.
Yeah. And I hear a lot in the clinic, I hear people say, yeah, my cat doesn't hunt because he doesn't bring any kills back to the house. And then when you actually put a camera on a cat, because they have done this, those cats might be the biggest hunters. They just don't bring the prey home. They just play with it, kill it, and then when it stops moving, it's no longer interesting, and then move on to the next thing. And it's not their fault, right? Let's be clear, I'm not blaming the cats here. It's just their instinct. They do this. And we know that they do this. So, it's not the cat's fault, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I had this conversation as well in my group of students when I was studying. And I was the only one that was in favor of legislation of confining cats to their owner's property. There were 2 that were on the fence, and the rest were completely against, because they said it would negatively impact the cat's welfare. But I still don't think that's a good argument, because then in that case you're placing the cat's welfare above all the welfare of the animals it's killing. Only because you own the cat and you like it.
Yeah, we were just discussing that when humans place themselves above other species, that's already problematic. So when humans start placing other species in a certain order, well, I can see why that would I can see from a human-centric perspective that making cats higher up the hierarchy could be something that we want as humans.
Yeah, but one of the things that like shocked me in that conversation is because I presented the data, right? And these are veterinary medicine students, so obviously they have an affinity with animals, and they still wouldn't budge. They said, well, if that's the case, then maybe we shouldn't keep cats, but that's not an option because like we want to, right?
Well, why is it not an if ethics is like everything is viable, then not owning cats is an option.
Yeah, for sure.
I think dogs cause way less harm. People tend to be less allergic to dogs. some of them.
I mean, when my friends genuinely ask me about advice with their cats, if they get a cat or own a cat, like what would you do? What would you advise me, right? From a professional standpoint, I would always advise them to keep the cat either indoors or indoors and in the backyard if it's cat proof. Because it will also just, like, we have the data and cats have a longer lifespan, they get less diseases, and we don't see any negative impact on their welfare as far as we can tell by observing behavior and playtime, stuff like that. But if you say something like that to someone, I mean, obviously my friends will be able to hear me out and look at my information and then come to their own conclusion. But if you speak to someone you don't know and you say that, then you get really intense responses, trust me. You prefer cats? That's fair.
Isn't that what is threatening the entire veterinarian medicine system to begin with? People getting emotional responses?
I mean, in a way.
I think this is just a small part of that, but
I mean, I think this is a major problem because the biodiversity in the Netherlands is already at an all-time low, right? We're suffering as a country with the amount of species that we're losing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and cats clearly don't help.
No. We don't know how big the impact of cats is currently, but we know it's at least significant.
There is a clear mental health benefit in owning cats.
Yep.
So, it's really complicated. The more I think about it, the more factors, the more little nodes in the system I can think.
A lot of veterinarian medicine questions actually end up like that, unfortunately.
Like all good ethics questions.
I know it doesn't imply a lot, but that's just because we don't have the data. Right?
Well, we have enough data to conclude that having cats in the wild is a significant threat to any ecosystem.
Yes, definitely. If you say it that way, yes, for sure. We can scientifically support that claim. And we also have enough data for me to advise in my future career that if someone earnestly asks me what I think is best for them, I would always 100% of the time advise no free roaming. Never.
I think there is both implications, right?
Hmm?
Both causal and correlational.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I believe if you get an animal, you are responsible not just for its well-being, but also for its actions. Like, if my bird, you know, I don't know, say someone brought a guinea pig in my room and my bird bit them, then it would be my responsibility, right?
Yeah, in the current ethics system that we have, yes.
Yes.
It is the extended risk of you as a person.
Yeah, but
That
we
is
can't.
you and anything you. Yeah.
Yeah, but we can't hold the owners of free roaming cats accountable.
We can.
Well, not in the current system.
I think legally that is how it works. It's just not provable, which means the law is not enforceable.
Yeah.
I
mean,
I'm kind of curious what would happen if you would see this picture. Someone took this picture, and maybe this cat has a chip. What would happen if that person would actually step forward?
I mean, first you'd have to find the cat because this is a picture from a trail camera.
Well, then we make NFC tags, and this camera suddenly read the chip in some mysterious way. What would happen? We can identify the cat.
And then you can hope that the owner's information is up to date. But say that's also mandatory, and it is. Then the thing we could do is find them for you know what I said. What is the English word again?
Yeah, for extended, I think it's called implicated risk in English, actually. Something like that.
Yeah, and it is translate from Dutch. Poaching. Yes. So
poaching.
Yeah, because poaching is illegal. So we could fine them for that. If they are responsible for the cat's actions. Same thing as if a child would do it. The parents are responsible, right?
Mm-hmm. At least that's how our insurance system looks at it, which is based on laws and legislation. So
yeah,
I would assume it.
But it could be different in other countries, of course.
At least in the European Union, these laws, at least for the insurance companies, are they're globally the same.
Okay. So yeah, sure because then I don't know what the fines are for poaching. I don't know if you want to look that up, Bastion.
I will look that up.
But yeah,
it's not going to be. It would just be the damages, right? So how would we establish damages on like this little animal that this cute cat has killed?
I don't know. You might need a wildlife biologist or something for that.
Like if we would buy this animal at the supermarket to eat, would it be like €10?
Maybe. Aren't there just like fines for poaching? Because I think there is. Yeah, the fine is 22,500. Or 3 years in jail.
But it is not poaching, because for poaching to be considered in a legal sense, it needs to be a person actively violating and also having the mental capability to understand that action.
I mean, if you let your cat outside, you do understand the consequence of your action. So you could argue. I mean, it's thin, yes, for sure, but you could argue.
That's not poaching anymore. Then it becomes the implicated risk. That the cat poaches doesn't mean the human is poaching. It's just the human lets the cat out, and that's negligent.
Right.
But this is getting really difficult, though. The fines could be between like 100 and 500 euro.
How would you establish valid control? That's the problem. This is the hypothetical situation that we could.
Yeah. It is in the Dutch nature conservation law that this is said. It is only enforced if the pet is proven to repeatedly hunt protected species. There has never been a fine, only a warning.
Yeah. That there's an implication because we have data from animal populations in the neighborhood. We have data from the cats, and they have done research on cats with cameras that they have been carrying around, for example. The data is there. There's actually a lot of data on cats and hunting. How have they done it? That differs between papers.
Give us one as an example.
I can. I don't have that in my notes, but I can open the paper if you want.
Well, I think it's an interesting question. Also ethically, how do you measure this in a meaningful way?
There was actually a paper about that too. It's called a review. Yeah, it's called Review and Synthesis of the Global Literature on Domestic Cat Impacts on Wildlife, from 2022.
That sounds like something I would write if I was a bioethicist.
It's a good paper. They basically took a lot of the where was it published? It is published. Let me open it actually. I can't see it.
The Nature Review, Volume 7.
It was published by the British Ecological Society in the Journal of Animal Ecology.
Oh. Okay, that sounds pretty good.
It was published in Volume 91, Issue 7, on pages 1361 to 1372.
That is a lot of pages for one issue.
Yes, and it was co-authored by a bunch of other scientists. It's been cited by 14 other papers, so this is a pretty good source, as far as I could tell.
Well, the title is already... It already sounded pretty solid.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, we have known since the 1970s that cats are a destructive force to our native wildlife. We've just chosen to ignore that fact.
Oh. How long have they been, according to the data that we have now, or at least the best guess, what is the time period that cats have roamed as an invasive species?
I don't know like a specific date, but the Egyptians already kept cats, right? So I would assume that cats have been kept as a pet for a long period of time.
It would be thousands of years before Christ. And then we are also tasking ourselves as humanity to now solve this ethical and biological issue in like 20 years.
I mean, but the thing is also, it's never been this pressing, right? Because humans do tend to cluster together more and more, and we tend to have more pets.
But it's also kind of like an enlightenment. We didn't even know of this behavior, or didn't care about this behavior, just like we didn't care about smoking causing cancer 50 years ago. So
yeah, exactly.
I think if we give it some time,
like from a veterinary perspective, the answer is so easy, because for the physical welfare of the cat, the lifespan of the cat, the welfare of the native wildlife, it's all better to have your cat on your own property. And we don't see an impact on the mental welfare as far as we can study this. So there is no negative to it except for the person's feelings. You know? And that's why this is an ethical problem and not a scientific problem at this point.
I think it's mostly a cultural problem. Cue my major.
There's no evidence for that, Nim, unfortunately.
Because as long as in our culture it is okay, and also kind of expected to let your cat roam outside, nothing will change. So you would need to teach children already from an early age about these things. So with time, because this is culture, takes time to change, both for the better and for the worse sometimes. And who decides that? That's a different debate. So if you try to change culture from the ground up, from very young, I think within 100 years, we could basically eradicate this problem and shift.
Maybe. For me personally, it would be great. From a science perspective, it would be great.
But is the time frame of 100 years, is that acceptable?
I don't know. No teeth, no problem. Yeah, see, that would be illegal, just like declawing. That's also illegal in the Netherlands.
Is it illegal in the animal protection law?
Declawing specifically is illegal, yeah. And a veterinarian is not permitted to do any medical procedure that is not needed unless it's a spay or neuter.
But wouldn't it be possible to argue, or is it always from the selfish position of the animal when you assess this, or do you need to take into account the environment as well?
Position of the animal, I think, according to if you lead the law to the letter.
Yeah.
What about eating them?
Sense.
I feel like you will be shamed by culture.
But then again, this is also a cultural issue.
Yeah,
if you take enough time and pull the right strings at the right times, then with time.
I think technically, if you don't actually harm the cat, it's not illegal.
Wouldn't eating a cat be considered harming them?
I mean, depends. If you find a deceased animal and you eat it, I don't think that's illegal in the Netherlands. I'm pretty sure it's not.
Kind of curious what the animal party's position is on this.
I think their position is the same as mine, but I'm not 100% sure. So if you want to know, you'd have to look it up.
Yeah,
so I haven't actually checked in a couple years. I mean, Inko, it's a like a problem that has a lot of aspects, but if you look at the data, the information that's there is undeniable.
Well, in the Netherlands, they, according to the animal party, they kill around 18 million birds.
Just the Netherlands alone, okay. And that's just birds. The numbers I was mentioning earlier were all kills. So.
Well, in the Netherlands, there has been some research by 2 lawyers, and they say it is actually illegal by law to let your cat go outside.
Can we still consider them invasive species if they've been around as a part of the ecosystem for hundreds of years? I would say yes if the ecosystem has not established like a stable relationship with that animal in the food web. So if the animal is still doing considerable damage to the ecosystem, I would say yes.
They also mentioned that cats that are already used to being outside could get really depressed if they suddenly have to stay indoors.
Yes, there is some research on that. That is true. But while I was in school, so last year, I actually read a paper on this specific issue where these cats would get depressed because they were bored, and when they took these cats and actually played with them, the negative effects disappeared. But they did say in the discussion at the end of the paper that they only had a small pool of cats, so they needed to do more research to actually determine if this was significant, right? This result. But it seems to be that the cats don't the negative effects come more from the fact that they're then bored than the fact that they're inside. Cats are getting overpowered. You're not wrong.
I found the position of the animal party.
Yes, you're right,
They-
Inku, but if you want, you can do your own research. I mean, if you go to PubMed, there is a bunch of papers on cats as invasive species, and they'll tell you mostly the same thing, that it's just a big problem. And the only thing that we can basically do as humans is remove the cause of the problem, which is the cat. Or we need to, in fact, like Passion said, find this high-tech invention that we can attach to the collar of a cat that would scare away any prey animal. And then make legislation so it's illegal to not have it, basically.
The Dutch animal party is very much against keeping cats indoors or keeping them on a leash.
Really?
But at the same time, they think it's important to keep the bird population. What?
Yeah, okay. So they basically say there is no problem. There is no spoon. We want the best of both worlds.
Is the farms, the intensive farming of the Netherlands, which kill most birds, and cats are not the #1 cause of declining bird population, according to the Dutch Animal Party, which is not a scientific organization.
No. I mean, they have a point. Obviously, there is other causes to declining population, right? We're not doing so well as a human species, like trying to keep other species alive. But the point that I'm making is not that, like, oh, cats are the main problem, they're the biggest issue that we're having. No, the point I'm making is that they are a big issue. Maybe not the biggest issue, but big enough that we should think about it. What do you think? Okay. You would have to talk to the owners about that scene. Usually when people make claims they have specific papers in a lens, it might. That is true, but I like to do my research into multiple papers. Plus I also have 7 years of data that I have gathered while I was at school. So those include books, reports from veterinarians, and countless other scientific articles that I had to read for assignments, but also for my patients, for everything.
The animal protection is also against keeping cats indoors.
I mean, yeah, if you want to be an organization that is liked by the public, you should be. Because let me tell you, like my stance on this is not making me popular by most people. It's also just easy to let your cat free, though. Just put it outside and don't think about it.
I can see it mostly being a cultural over an ethical debate. It's just we like cats too much. That's the problem.
Yeah, because it's really hard to defend, right? Even ethically.
Can we bioengineer cats to be less cute?
Bioengineered. I mean, we are seeing. This is anecdotal evidence, I'll say. There's no scientific evidence yet, but I have talked to other veterinarians, and especially in the Netherlands, we're seeing a shift towards cats that are more social. So we were actually wondering if cats are not evolving into being more social even from when I started school 7 years ago. They seem to be more social than I was taught, which is interesting. But yeah, that's a bit off topic. Just bring swings, you'll see the cat population decreasing. They're probably getting they're probably going to be made illegal in the Netherlands. So yeah, I don't know if that's gonna happen.
Can't we just give the birds a gene so they are really stinky? And the cat doesn't like it anymore.
Well, Nim just suggested something else to make the cats really stinky so the birds will smell them and learn how to avoid it.
See, great minds.
I don't know if that would be possible. I mean, that would also be a negative welfare effect on the cat if they're constantly being engulfed by a sticky cloud, you know? But hey, make an entire podcast dedicated to cats? I don't know.
That's also negative for the welfare of the cat.
Yeah.
Shy.
So yeah, there is no current solution that we can just implement and like throw this problem away. But I feel like it's incredibly important when I do talk about invasive species that I do not leave pets out. Because as much as we love them, right? As much as we care for them, yeah, no, they do damage. And just turning away from that, I think, is bad for someone, especially in my profession. I feel like I should, consider all aspects of an issue. And this is a major problem because there are so many of them. Yeah, fashion also actually suggested that, yes, giving them a collar that emits a sound heard only by birds. And yes, that would be great. It would save the birds, right? But yeah, exactly, other small animals. So then we still have the amphibians, the reptiles, and the mammals to consider. Because it's not just birds. When we talk about the problem with free roaming cats and hunting and the invasive species, we mostly circle back to the birds because this is what's most in the public eye, right? But it's not just birds. They're killing a bunch of other animals too. I mean, even the picture that I picked for this one from the trail camera, it's carrying a mammal. Yeah, basically, no, don't keep cats anymore, right? So, and that goes too far for most people, which I mean, obviously, in my first ever podcast when we talked about ethics, we talked about is it even ethically defendable to keep pets at all? And I don't really want to get into that right now. But yeah, if we don't want to get rid of the cats, then maybe the only real permanent solution would be to make it illegal for them to free roam. And then you can also, like, if you find a cat free roaming, then you can find the owner, right? And you can find them. But right now, in the current cultural environment, this is just not an option because there would be too much uproar. We allow cats.
Well, but they kind of already do, right? They already TNR cats that are not chipped, and they already allow cats being caught in these.
I mean,
metal
I
cage
know
type
in
things.
certain countries they had this major problem with wildcats, and they started hunting them down. And then also some domestic cats started getting captured that were free roaming. So then people would put collars on their cats, so it, you would know that they're domestic. So I mean, but in the Netherlands we don't have that many feral cats. It's mostly domestic ones. I don't actually know. Fashion, do you want to look something up?
Yes.
Can you look up how many feral cats we have in the Netherlands? Because I think it's really low. Hunters are looking for new targets because they killed everything. Oh my god. I mean, you're not wrong.
Around 135,000 to 200,000 compared to 2.6 to 3 million domestic cats.
Yeah, okay, so it's minor.
So it's less than 10%.
Yeah.
Probably around 5%.
Yeah, so that's compared to some other countries, that's minimal.
But that's an interesting number because the Animal Protection Service said at least 18 million birds were killed by cats.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that on average there is more than one kill per year per cat.
Yes. And some of these cats will also be indoor cats. Actually, a lot of the cats in the Netherlands are indoor cats. This was surprising to me when I first started working in actual clinics. How many cats are actually indoor cats? But in the Netherlands, we actually have a lot of indoor cats, which, like I said, I'm a fan of. So those cats aren't hunting at all.
Most families that own cats that I know are all indoor cats, except farm cats.
Yeah. It's becoming more common, especially, like I said, with the catios and stuff.
I wish I could make a catio.
I mean, you can. Just build one.
I would love building the catio more than the cat, but...
Make it a business. Just start selling catios that you build.
Hates cats, likes building catios. Instant, instant success.
Anyway, is there anything else we should discuss about the cats? I think we covered most things. But yeah, this is a very deep issue, a very big issue, one that has a bunch of different scientific research and other considerations. So if you are interested in the whole cat invasive species debacle, I would highly recommend you do your own research from credible sources. They release bred pheasants into the wood here during hunting season. That could also become an invasive species problem, I guess, if they were to establish themselves, but yeah.
Lazuli, did you
Huh?
know of the chickens in the Juliana Park in Utrecht?
I know of the parakeets in Amsterdam, but I haven't heard of the chickens.
Like 20 years ago, someone just dropped 4 chickens in the park, and now there are hundreds. And they're also like outside the park a little bit. They are expanding their territory. So very close to where I lived.
Wow. Chicken.
So yes, they are cute. They're also very invasive. They eat all the
Insects.
all the food.
All the native insects, probably.
Yes.
But you're already suffering.
And they're very fat because people also feed them bread.
Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised.
So we're literally supporting this model of invasion. But to be honest, Europeans are good at that. So.
Okay. I mean, to be fair, a lot of invasive species that are considered cute or are released pets are in one way or another supported by human presence. But speaking of insects, I was going to go move on, or else we can talk about cats for hours, right? Because there's so many details to the whole discussion. But if we wanted to dive deeper into that, I would have to make like episode specifically for that, where I have way more sources and
Yeah, especially with things like this, because now we're kind of shooting all these different ideas, but we need to.
Yeah, if you want more, yeah.
And,
if you want more objective data, I would need to look up more objective data, which I can do for sure. But for the purpose of today, it's a bit more too much detail. So, I mean, I already said in the podcast channel as well, if you guys ever have a subcategory of my streams that you think deserves a whole, like, 3 hours, then just let me know, because I can add it to the topic list.
like pet ownership, for example.
Yeah. Well, we have one more question from Glavo, and she is asking if there are invasive species that live right by us and we have no idea about. Right?
So
Which is nice.
Beetles, or what are they?
So yeah, I was gonna talk about the insects. So here we have some beetles. These guys are invasive. I have to admit I forgot the name and I feel ashamed.
They are red, white spotted beetles.
Yeah.
Easy name.
But insects came to mind when I heard her question mostly. Because there's a lot of insects that have become invasive. The most famous ones would be ants, but there's way more that are pests to native plants, sometimes also wildlife. For example, in the Netherlands, if you want a very veterinarian example, so there's this parasite that can infect dogs. It's a heartworm, and we're free from the heartworm. They have never been here. This is not their native environment, but they're coming. Each year they're coming closer towards the border, also because of global warming. So very soon we'll probably also have them in the country, which is a very small invasive species that we probably would not, well, we can't really even see them, but may have detrimental effects to the health, in this case, of our dogs.
Would the name be spotted lanternfly?
I think so.
Yay.
Sea crabs. Sea crab.
They are tree crabs.
Cute. Well, I thought they were cute and they looked good, so you know. It also serves so.
They are increasingly being found in Europe as well.
Oh, that's less good. Thought they were just like staying away. Okay.
They have been spotted in the Netherlands for the first time in 2023.
Oh
by
no.
the NVWA.
That's not good.
In a shipment from Asia.
Oh, okay. So we're probably fine then if they found them.
There is no indication of established populations in the wild, but authorities are on high alert.
Okay. Well, that's good. Because, yeah, like I said, insects can also do massive amounts of damage, mostly to plants, but also to animals, and in turn, overcolors that affects everything, because everything is connected in the food web. In some countries, they're trying to eradicate invasive insects, and they're using a very interesting technique called the sterile insect technique. Want to guess what it is?
What?
The sterile insect technique.
So they sterilize insects? But how?
Yeah, so what they're doing is
Like
they're
they cut off
breeding.
their genitals?
No. They're breeding sterile insects, and then they're releasing those into the wild, hoping they will mate with the actual invasive species, lowering the population. Kind of what the domestic cats are doing to certain native felines by accident.
And does it actually work?
Yes, it seems to work. So the most famous trial is the sterile mosquitoes.
You mean in the malaria areas?
Yeah. So what they were doing was they're breeding sterile male mosquitoes, right? Because they don't sting, and then releasing them by the thousands, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we do see a drop in population. Obviously after the breeding season, right? Because we're not actually taking them out of the environment, just reducing the amount of offspring.
Yes. If it works, it works.
I can add this source to my sources list.
Yes.
And you have it.
Lists all the sources that I definitely read in preparation of co-hosting this amazing podcast.
I mean, I if I use an article, I'm gonna list it.
Yes, and I am just winging it.
Which is fair.
And sometimes dropping some difficult humanities type term in the process.
I mean, the thing is, the whole sterile insect thing has been in development since the 1950s. It's a long time ago. That's the first time we actually heard of it. And now we're actually putting it into practice, so it's actually really cool. Here, this article says, these programs have eliminated the screw worm fly, or Cochlimedia homnivorox, from the United States, Mexico, and Central America. So it's working. This is working. And the great thing is it's non-polluting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Though, of course, you are increasing the population of the insects at first, right? Because you're releasing a huge amount of sterile ones. So at first you're going to increase the stress on the ecosystem, but in the hope that the next cycle, it's going to be way better.
I'm also thinking you would need more sterile males than non-sterile males, right, to make this effective?
Yeah, well, you need to just do it for a really long period of time, like multiple years in a row.
Yeah, but I mean, eventually, if the population is not like if there are more regularly breeding insects left, they would always come back up, right? They would take over as the dominant trait.
Like,
I'm
you
not
mean
sure
if
I'm
if we
wording this
only
correctly.
have like a couple breeding pairs left, they can still come back. That's what you mean.
Yeah, eventually. No, I mean, you need to make the non-breedable, the sterile insects the dominant species, right? At some point in the process.
Yeah.
But to do that, you would need an enormous amount of those animals already ready to deploy.
Yes, they're breeding them in facilities. And then they're releasing them
Ah,
during like the time that there's usually mating going on, you know?
you could just make the sterile ones stronger and more prone to breeding.
Maybe.
Just give them hormones.
But yeah, obviously this specific way of controlling an invasive species is not gonna work for most problems. Like, we can't just do this with lionfish, right? If we make a lot of male lionfish infertile and then release them, they're still going to live for a long time and do damage to the environment. The fact that this works for mosquitoes, for example, is because they have such a short lifespan.
How long does a malaria carrying mosquito live?
From the top of my head, 6 weeks. But if you want a definitive answer, you'll have to look it up. Mosquitoes weren't in my veterinary education.
But they are animals and they are invasive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm disappointed. No.
Okay.
And these beetles? How long
These
do they
guys?
live?
I think 1 season.
Hmm.
I could be wrong
That's
though.
but that's considerably longer than 6 weeks.
Yeah. But the thing is, we can keep the sterile ones in a facility if we know when breeding occurs. Because then you can just release them when breeding occurs. And then you obviously will increase the stress on the environment, but then you're not having them in that environment for the whole lifespans.
Hmm. And they could breed every season, right? Because otherwise they would die out. Yes, you just told me they live a season. Great question, Passion. but but anyways, you could do that in winter, and then it would be of limited consequences to at least a produce.
Yeah, so obviously, unless you're going to release millions and millions and millions, you're gonna have at least some offspring, right? There's going to be a fertile female finding a fertile male. So it is something that's not just a one-time thing. We're gonna do this one time and it's going to go fine. It's possible that if you do it one time, the ecosystem might, like, the species might already start collapsing. But in general, it's not going to just be a one-off and we're done next week type thing, you know? Yes, freeze the sterile insects and wake them up when it's egg season. I'm not sure about that one.
Wouldn't it just be so handy if we had the Infinity Stones and could just snap half of the insects to one?
Yeah.
That's how Thanos should actually have used it. Just snap.
Get
half
rid
the
of all the
invasive
invasive
gone.
species.
Well, he kinda did. He also did it with humans, though. That's kinda sad.
Yeah. But yeah, so for a species to be actually susceptible to this sterile technique, it needs to hit a lot of boxes. So it's very situational. It does give a lot of promise. We would need a responsible person for that. Yeah, true.
Yeah, so not me. Well, would this be something that that you would need to be to develop in a very secure facility?
The sterile
Like if you mess
insects?
this up, yeah, like if you mess this up and suddenly the entire city is flooded with these things, even though they're sterile.
I mean, that's why for mosquitoes they were breeding males specifically, because they don't stink.
Well, I'm gonna be honest, I'm out of questions.
Yeah, according to this, like it's basically what I said. The sterile males impact size of wild populations in the next generation, but not the current one. Significant population reduction should be seen after a small number of generations. This is likely to be weeks or months rather than hours or days. So you need to do this for multiple generations. So for species that live longer, it's just not an option, right? And then this one is interesting for you, Passion. There's one thing that this article actually brings up, which is saying that a genetic control of mosquitoes is wrong. Just changing their genetics to breed them as a sterile species is wrong, morally.
And what argument do they pose for saying it's morally wrong?
Not sure. They then go on about saying that it's too management intensive to succeed, and then they go on to debunk that.
What? But it being management intensive, even like it not being possible and therefore failing, does not make it instantly ethically wrong or morally wrong. I don't see the causal.
They do say we need to make sure that we don't accidentally release biting insects.
Well, yes. But this is kind of like, wow, a pilot flies into a mountain. We should make sure they don't fly into a mountain.
Yeah, okay.
Ethically, it's wrong to fly your plane into a mountain.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Maybe it's just because I mean, genetic modification is controversial, right? They're probably just trying to get people off their backs.
I think that's it. I think they had a comment about it and just were like, shit, we need to
acknowledge this a little bit.
A little bit.
And then just move on like never.
There are many ethical problems with genetic modification. Mostly the God complex, the Savior complex, all the things I've talked about throughout this stream.
Mass Effect, I have not played it. Yeah, I mean the whole God complex thing, it can be applied to a lot of almost anything.
A lot of bioethical debates, I think.
Yeah.
At least as part of it. It's really difficult because we cannot speak from the point of the mosquito.
No, exactly.
Well, we could, but then we have to deduce that they would never grasp this kind of moral. That they would never grasp their moral implications.
I mean, we don't know that. We don't know how intelligent mosquitoes are. We know they most likely feel pain, like I explained in another stream, but...
Yeah, but can they process that and then attach a value
a negative,
to that,
yeah,
like
exactly.
This human.
Yeah, we don't even know if it's just a neural response or if it's a cognitive response, obviously, because there's no way for us to test that.
Yeah, so there's so many unknowns that to say definitively genetic modification is bad is really difficult. I wouldn't be comfortable making that claim.
Yeah, I mean,
even though my gut feeling says it's bad.
Yeah. I mean, in general, you could also apply that, like, for the invasive species. They don't know they're invasive, right? A lionfish that's just hanging out in the reef eating some fishies doesn't know he's invasive and he's doing damage to the planet.
Isn't the goal of any living organism to reproduce as much as possible?
Basically, yeah.
So they are basically doing exactly what they were designed to do, just more effectively than other species.
Yeah.
So actually we should praise them and let them take over everything.
I mean, yeah, but then they will eventually die out as the food web and the biome and everything collapses.
But then a new biome would ensue, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing I said, that the Earth itself does not care, it will move on. we care as a human, like humanity, because we don't want to die. And when we're talking about house cats killing birds, right? Then maybe the idea of we don't want to die as humanity, as a species, is very far away. But it's all connected.
Well, of course, because we also eat eggs and chicken, and chickens are birds, and there's also bird flu and many diseases that can also be spread by cats, I presume.
Bird flu currently, cats seem to be more susceptible than other mammals to it, but as far as I know, there's been no reports of actual cats spreading bird flu to other birds or to their human counterparts. There is one report, I think from the United States, where a zoo animal, I think it was a tiger, got the aviary influenza, so the bird flu, and gave it to a keeper. But other than that...
But that's... Yeah, okay, that's really thin. But
Yeah.
I can imagine that this is just an example, but this thought idea is very prevalent throughout the entire animal kingdom.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have all the answers. I just, like, one of the things that I want to do with these streams is also, like, share the knowledge that I do have. And I am not afraid to admit that, like, obviously, I don't know everything. The fact that the things I know is probably very limited. But I have access to this information, and people are willing to learn, right? So they can form their own opinions as well.
And with things like this, if people say your opinion is wrong with ethical debates like this, especially with something so as close to your heart as animals, that's really ignorant, to be honest. So yes, form your own opinions. And to add to you saying you have this knowledge, I don't. I just give my the first thing that pops into my
mean,
brain.
yeah, but in general, just think critically, verify your sources, use multiple sources instead of just one. And then be willing to change your conclusion in the event you find more information. Because that last part, that is very important too. If you make a conclusion...
Humans are not very good at that.
They are not, indeed. You have to catch yourself, truly. Or we wouldn't have confirmation bias and all of that, right? But yeah, if you form a good conclusion based on good information, still be willing to change it when faced with new information. That's so important.
Yes. Because at the start of this episode, I was still thinking, well, biogenetic... sorry, my English is extremely broken at this time of day. Mostly because I woke up at 4 a.m. But
oh yeah, you did. I forgot.
Bioengineering was very bad, but I can see some use cases where it would actually be really useful.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it all becomes a little bit cloudy and muddy, and honestly, I don't even want to conclude anything after the stream, to be.
Yeah, that usually ends up happening. But yeah, I think we covered most of our bases. Obviously, like, again, this is very superficial, because I don't want to keep you guys here for 10 hours talking in depth about every little species. But yeah, I hope you learned something, and I hope at least, even if you didn't, that you thought about it, you know?
I hope so too.
I don't like making conclusions in the event that I'm spreading misinformation. Fair. A 10-hour. Well, that's okay.
Well, if we do a 10-hour cat talk, I can assure you it wouldn't be very positive. At least.
I mean, there is a lot of positives you can talk about for cats. Like I said, they're good for the humans' mental health, and the fact that they seem to be becoming more social is very interesting. And I can talk a lot about all kinds of medical stuff for cats because, yeah.
fair enough.
I can
Sure.
say that I'm a veterinarian now, you know?
Are they the most kept pet?
Depends on the
Or is it
country.
Still dogs. I mean, in the Netherlands.
Yes, in the Netherlands, cats outnumber dogs.
But do they outnumber bicycles? The answer is no.
No. Nothing outnumbers the bicycles. Not even the people outnumber the bicycles.
Not even the buildings.
Okay. I'm going to go find the rate.
I'm going to find something to eat.
Yeah, me too.
Or maybe not. That's also good for dieting.
Is dieting? This is news to me.
Yeah, no, but I'm doing opposite Ramadan. So when it's dark, no eating. And when it's no, that sounded extremely insensitive. I'll do that.
Let's just say you're trying to challenge yourself.
Not really, I just don't want to cook anything.
Fair
Maybe
enough.
I'll make your ramyun.
Oh, I mean, you could.
Not bad, but it's the really spicy one, so I need to be in the right mindset for that.
Yeah, let me know if it actually is very spicy. Anyway, I am hungry and it's late, so I am not going to go find a raid. I am going to raid Anko. Because she's the only one.
She's playing Planet Coaster. Oh, wait.
No,
Craft.
Planet Crafter. Yeah, but she's the only one currently on my follow list that's live, so I'm going to just rate her.
Oh, the Super Auto Pets is the guy is live. I still follow that person.
I don't, apparently. I don't know.
Wow. Only 45 viewers, my goal. Well, thank you guys for listening to me yap and listen to Lazuli actually sound smart and stuff. See you next time.
You're smart too. You have expertise on fields that I don't.
That is true.
Yes, and people in chat, thank you for the engagement and your questions, as always, keeping me on my toes. And I did have fun. Next week, obviously, we don't have one, and then the week after, probably we will, depending on my time and stuff. So,
Yay.
back to the usual schedule. I might start streaming Cult of the Lamb next week, or the week after that. Depending on if I can get it working.
I might drop in if I'm not at work or busy writing a thesis. I guess I won't drop in.
Passion's brain went, wait, oh no, oh no.
My week is.
Anyway, have a good night to all of you. Take care of yourselves. Have some good food. And I'll see you next time, alright? Good luck
Bye.
tomorrow on Monday. Bye bye.